Benvinguts i benvingudes al... Sí? He de parlar així o se'm sent bé? Sí? O millor sí? Sí, millor sí. Com? Sí. Però encara ten veu, Crec que Rodalia Renfe encara m'ha deixat un poc sense veu. Bueno, molt bé, bon dia a tots i totes. Gràcies per haver vingut a la defensa de la tesi doctoral de la senyoreta Paula Gabriela Córdoba Ariza. Com qualsevol acte acadèmic, intentarem procedir amb tot el respecte a la tradició acadèmica, que significa que la doctoranda farà la seva defensa de la tesi en un temps raonable. A partir del temps raonable, els membres del tribunal, que ara mateix presentarem, farem preguntes. Però sobretot una cosa molt important, no s'hauria d'aplaudir quan acabi la seva exposició. Per molt brillant que sigui, els aplaudiments els deixarem pel final de l'acte, una vegada que el tribunal hagi decidit la nota i fem tot això. Ho dic sobretot per un poc de respecte a l'hora de, encara, quan sigui doctora, ja aplaudirem tots el que sigui necessari i li donarem les gràcies. Per tant, amb això intentarem ser formals com qualsevol acte de tesi doctoral. Welcome to this academic event where we are. Señorita Paola Gabriela Córdoba Ariza is defending in the PhD Viva the thesis with the title Scale-Dependent Patterns of Hydrological, Chemical and Ecological Descriptors in an Intensively Managed Mediterranean River. The members of the panel, on my right is Olivier Ribolsi, Institut de Recherche pour le Développement, Geoscience Environment, Toulouse, France. On my left, and as a substitution, the member of what we call the vocal, María Isabel Muñoz Gracia, del Departament de Biologia Evolutiva, Ecologia i Ciències Ambientals de la Universitat de Barcelona. Gràcies per haver assistit i haver acceptat a darrera hora el canvi. I com a president, en Celso García, del Departament de Geografia de la Universitat de les Illes Balears. D'acord? La tesi doctoral no ho he dit. Oficialment surt Supervisors by Sergi Sabater, Ramon Batalla i Josep Mas. And, well, the idea is just to have, you will have reasonable time for your PhD Viva, 1 hour and something like that. The idea what we have is after the defense, your presentation, we're going to make you questions and comments. And it's better if you ask to each of the members. We will start with Olivier, after that with Isabel, and myself will be the last one. And we are going to make you questions, suggestions, comments, and you have time for debate and answer and all these things with us. So I think you prefer when we move to the front chairs just to have a better view of the defense. And I think we are ready just for starting. So we have to move to that. And
thank you.
So the floor or the stage is yours. Okay.
Thank you. Let me check if this is working. Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gabriela Córdoba, and today I'm pleased to present you my doctoral dissertation titled Scale-Dependent Patterns of Hydrological, Chemical, and Ecological Descriptors in an Intensively Managed Mediterranean River, supervised by Drs. Josep Mas, Sergi Sabater, and Ramon Batalla. Today's presentations will be structured as follows. So first, I will do an introduction of the topic, and I will introduce the general aim of my work. Then I will do an overview of the methods. Especially, I will describe the study area and the sampling design. And then I will explain to you my main results, which are structured in 4 chapters. Finally, I will do a synthetic discussion of my results and I will present the practical management implication of them. Okay, so climate change and intense anthropogenic pressures are worsening the critical issue of water scarcity. We usually think of water scarcity as a lack of water volume, but the truth is that the imbalance between the water demands and the water that is needed to support human and ecological needs not only depends on the quantity, but also on the quality of the water. What we can see here is a map that illustrates how, when we not only consider the quantity, but also if the water is good enough to use it, the number of people that are facing water scarcity increases. The Mediterranean is a paradigmatic example of the worsening of water scarcity. What this map shows is how climatic projections agree on the fact that there will be decline on stream flow, especially in the red areas. These altered hydrological regimes have been correlated with an altered capacity of the dilution for the systems. My thesis wants to explore the interplay between global change, hydrological dynamics, and water quality using three interconnected concepts, which are, first, the shift in hydrological patterns and the intensification of intermittency. Second, the link between hydrological dynamics and water quality. And finally, the importance of a multi-scale approach when understanding human pressure systems. Because this leads to a fluctuating hydrological connectivity across the network, as we can see in this diagram. Whether a segment is dry or wet depends a lot on the flow generation processes. Because during dry periods, base flow contributions can sustain surface water. Okay. In these systems, the link between hydrology and water quality is very strong. Because if a segment is wet or dry, the biogeochemical processes occurring on it and the water chemistry characteristics will change. For instance, when the system is connected, transport can occur. So the current will transport solutes and materials downstream. But when flow ceases and the system breaks into isolated pools and dry segments, this transport ceases. In the pools, local factors will become more important and will determine many characteristics of the water. At the same time, accumulation will increase, and it will also increase the water residence time. In the dry segments, aerobic reactions are enhanced, and storage is also increasing. When it rains and the system suddenly reconnects, all these materials are transported, and there's a peak of the chemical reactions, something that we often call a hot moment. Human activities add another layer of complexity to this natural variability. So, for instance, what we see here is agriculture and industries. And we can see how irrigation that depends on water abstraction can lower water tables and can increase dryness and intermittency. But at the same time, these activities produce inputs that add an artificial base flow to the system and can change the conditions of the chemistry. This effect is highly dependent on scale. In this segment in particular, for example, we can see how, now that the system is disconnected, the effect of the pollutant, of the input that this industry is giving to the system, is highly localized. But when the system is connected again, it can have an effect also downstream. So this leads us to a knowledge gap. While we know the effect of human activities and drought conditions, the interplay between this and in intermittent rivers and in water quality is still understudied. My thesis seeks to answer questions within this gap. It has the general aim of assessing how climatic variability and intense anthropogenic pressures shape the hydrological patterns and nutrient conditions in an intermittent Mediterranean basin, and to do so at different spatial scales. I had 4 specific aims. First, analyze the long-term trends in the basin hydrology and nutrients, identifying the climatic and anthropogenic drivers that could be linked to them. Second, monitor and characterize the spatial patterns and drivers of current nutrient concentrations and primary producer biomass. Third, evaluate the contribution of different water sources to surface water composition and the influence they have in on water quality. And finally, develop and apply a SWOT plus model, not only to model the current hydrological dynamics, but alternative scenarios that could give us insights about management implications. So every objective will correspond to one of the chapters that I will explain today. To do this, I use a combination of existing records and field monitoring. And I did all of this in the Oñar River Basin. The Oñar is a sub-basin of the Ter River that is located in the northeast of the Iberian Peninsula. It drains about 300 square kilometers to the north. So the outlet of the basin is located in the city of Girona. It flows very near to here. We chose the Oñar because of 3 reasons. First, the Oñar is Mediterranean. Second, it has an intermittent regime. And third, it is chronically stressed by different human activities. So in the headwaters, the Oñar is highly forested. But in the low areas and in the middle, there's a lot of agricultural activities that rely on irrigation, from groundwater resources. Okay, so additionally to this, we have industrial activities like livestock production and food industries that are also relying on groundwater resources. Additionally, there are 5 wastewater treatment plants, urban wastewater treatment plants, and different effluents from industrial sources. So what we think is that this system is an example that could help us derive insights for basins that are facing similar challenges. Okay. To monitor the different hydrological conditions and human influences, we use this sampling design. So we sampled the surface water biogeochemistry in 23 points across the basin, and we did it every month from May 2021 to July 2022. This period was the onset of drought conditions in Catalonia, so this is a very important fact for understanding some of our results. Additionally, we installed 4 points of continuous water measurement with level loggers, the points in blue, and we installed 5 controls of the water table, so 5 piezometers, which are in red. Okay, I will now proceed to explain the results. No, sorry. So, well, this sampling design allows to monitor at different scales. So first we have the sampling site scale, then associated to it the sub-basin scale, and finally the basin scale. Okay, now on my first chapter I had the objective of analyzing the long-term trends over the past decades and to analyze also the possible drivers that could be associated to them. So I wanted to analyze the long-term trends in the basin hydrological regime, evaluate changes in nutrient concentrations, and identify co-occurring changes in potential drivers. I used existing records for that, and trend analysis methods. So in particular, I used the stream flow data from the Catalan Water Agency here in the Girona gouging station, so at the outlet of the basin, from the 60s to now. And I used the time series from nutrients of the same agency from the 2007 to 2020, also taken in the same station. As possible drivers, I use climatic, land use, population, agrological data from the 60s to now. We did a graphical assessment, but we also did a statistical test, one for determining if there were a significant increasing or decreasing trends, and another to detect important points where the time series were changing. Well, starting with the drivers and with the climate, we found that there was a significant increase in temperature of about 2 degrees in the last decades, especially after the 70s, and a significant decrease in the precipitation. So climate change is an important driver for this basin. But it's not the only one, because we also saw important changes in the landscape and in the water uses. What we see here is a map that compares the land cover between the 1987 and 2017. And we saw 3 important processes. So the first one is an afforestation process, an increase in the irrigation area, here especially in the alluvial zones, and a doubling of the urbanized area. Urbanized area also includes the farms and the industrial complex, and both of these processes are related to an increase in the use of groundwater resources. So when we checked the water demands, we saw that there was an increase of 18% in the water demand, mainly after the 2000. So there's a higher exploitation of groundwater resources in the basin. How is this reshaping the hydrological dynamics? What we found was a significant decrease in stream flow of about 50% in the daily mean flows. What we have here is a flow duration curve. So in the y-axis, we have the flow magnitudes, and in the x-axis, we have the exceedance frequency. So the probability that a flow is equally or exceeded. Here, we will have the highest flows, the flows that are exceeded less of the time. Here in the 50, we will have the median flows, and here we will have the lower flows. In this graph, each line corresponds to a decade, and the dotted line corresponds to the whole studied period. So what this plot illustrates is how, in the last 2 decades, which are in red, there has been a significant decrease in the daily flows, something that was corroborated by the petit test change point detection test. So we found a significant test around September of 2000. And we saw that this decrease was especially important in the high and the median flows, and that there was an apparent increase in the low flows. When we break this down by seasons, we found that in the rainy season, in spring, this trend continues. So what we see here is a decrease in all flow frequencies, but in the low flows. And in the driest period, which is the summer, the apparent increase in low flows is even more noticeable. So increase in low flow magnitudes. This increase in low flow magnitudes can be related to the increase in the wastewater discharges in the basin, because it was in the last 2 decades that the wastewater treatment plants were implemented, and that there was also a significant increase in industrial activities. So what we see is that this wastewater is adding an artificial base flow in the driest periods, especially. Okay, so far we saw the changes in the drivers and the changes in the hydrological patterns. How is this related to the nutrient conditions? We found a significant increase in ammonium and nitrate loads. So this increase was especially steep during summer, but the worst water quality conditions are in autumn and in winter. Okay, this we related to two things. First, the increase in nitrate inputs from fertilization and groundwater pollution. And second, an increase of the contribution of wastewater for the ammonium. Overall, this chapter shows that the system is becoming drier, that these changes are seasonal, and that they have impacts on the water quality. But also, the fact that the wastewater is masking the base flow in the outlet also shows us that there's a limitation when we are only analyzing the basin in the outlet. So what we wanted to do in the next chapter was to overcome this by analyzing the current nutrient conditions across the whole basin. So, okay. We wanted to characterize the current nutrient and algal biomass patterns across the basin, identify the potential drivers associated to them, and assess how the importance of those drivers change spatially. We used our field monitoring data, and we used machine learning methods to analyze them. So as target variables, we had total nitrogen, nitrates, total phosphorus, and phosphates, but also suspended and benthic chlorophyll as surrogates of algal biomass. To explain the patterns of these variables, we had a set of 23 explanatory variables that included site as a control, and that were describing physical conditions, hydrological connectivity and stream network, and the human activities and the land cover. In today's presentation, I will focus on the total nitrogen and total phosphorus results because it shows a better overall response. It can show us better the overall response in the nutrients. Okay. So we use the combination of these two machine learning methods. First, the random forest regressions that can help us predict the nutrient concentrations and that have a set of advantages because it can capture nonlinear relationships, it handles mixed data types, and it reduces overfitting. But random forest is not always easy to understand. What I mean is that it's not easy to understand how the model is doing a certain prediction. So it's a bit of a black box. And that is why we use the SHAP values, because the SHAP values can help us explain how the model is doing the predictions. So it gives us an idea of the variable importance and the variable importance for each prediction. So with this, we can map how the drivers vary across the basin, how the drivers' importance vary across the basin. This combined approach then gives us accurate predictions and interpretable drivers in an spatially explicit manner. Okay. So for the total nitrogen, we found that, well, what we see here is two maps. Here, there's a map of the total nitrogen median concentration in each of the sampling points, and yellow is a higher concentration. And here, we have a map of the total nitrogen coefficient of variation. Again, yellow is the highest variability, the highest values. What we can see here is that the sites with higher concentrations are located in the median portion of the basin, where there's also a concentration of the industrial and agricultural activities, but they don't always coincide with the sites with the higher variability, because the sites of the higher variability can be located, for instance, in the headwaters or in other tributaries. This shows that the sites with high concentrations have consistently high concentrations across the time, and these sites have more intense fluctuations. How can we explain these patterns? SHAP values show us that the percentage of irrigated crops and the contributing area are the most important variables. And this highlights the importance that diffuse sources of pollutions can have for the total nitrogen dynamics. Regarding total phosphorus, well, here we can see the same maps. We found that the hotspots of the total phosphorus concentrations were located in the downstream reaches near to the mouth, and that again, these sites with the highest concentrations are not the same that vary the most. So this can be again located in headwaters. These patterns are explained. By far, the most important variable for explaining these patterns is the number of wastewater effluents. So this suggests the importance that the point sources of pollution can have in these total phosphorus dynamics. Finally, regarding the suspended chlorophyll, we found that it was explained in those. So the fact that suspended chlorophyll is can be modeled and it can be interpreted suggests that it is a good indicator, or that it could be a good indicator for this type of systems. So far, I have shown you which are the variables that help us explain the patterns of the nutrients at the basin scale. But this analysis can also be useful to understand localized effects of the variables. That is what we see here. So here is an example for the total nitrogen and one explanatory variable, that is the degree of intermittency. Degree of intermittency wasn't an important variable overall. So for the whole basin, it was selected in the model, but was not the top ranked. But what this map shows us is that in these points in orange, it is relevant. So intermittency can explain nutrient patterns at specific sites. And this didn't happen only for the total nitrogen, but also for the total phosphorus. And in general, we found that higher intermittency was related to higher nutrient concentrations. So in general, SHAP mapping differentiates the areas where hydrological conditions could be particularly relevant for explaining the nutrient patterns. In summary, with this chapter, we identified the main nutrient drivers, which were the irrigated crop and the wastewater discharges, which suggests the strong influence that the human activities have in these low dilution systems. So these systems have a very low dilution capacity. On the other hand, SHAP can help us separate the areas that hydrological related variables are more important than the human pressure variables. And finally, that suspended chlorophyll could be an important indicator, biological indicator, for these type of systems. Okay, so moving from the current nutrient conditions to the current hydrological dynamics, in the next chapter, we wanted to evaluate the relative contribution of different water sources to surface water composition and how this influenced the water quality. For this chapter, water sources can be understood as simply different types of water that are mixed in the surface water, as it can be the headwater runoff, the groundwater base flow, and the wastewater. Okay, so we wanted to characterize the sources and quantify their contributions and the variability across the basin. We again used the data from our field monitoring, and we analyzed it with an n-member mixing analysis. So we had surface water hydrochemical data that included on-site measurements and ions. And we had the potentiometric data from the field piezometers. For the characterization of the sources, we used Piper plots and B plots, and we used complementary information from the literature and the knowledge we have about the hydrogeological setting of the basin. For the quantification of the contribution of each source in each sample, we used the end-member mixing analysis approach with the mixed code. Okay, so because the different sampling sites have different hydrogeological and human influences, we divided the sites in 3 zones. So first we had the zone 1 in the headwaters. So it is upstream from important municipal and wastewater treatment plant discharges. We have the zone 2 downstream from some urban wastewater treatment plant releases, and the zone 3, which is downstream from all the industrial activity. As possible sources in this basin, we have the groundwater, the wastewater, and the runoff from the headwater. And we wanted to know which components can characterize them and differentiate them. So we used the Piper plots and the complementary data to select 3 possible components, which were the calcium, the nitrates, and the chloride. And with the B plots, we were sure that the combination of these sources was enough to explain the variability in our samples. So here we can see that all the samples are inside of the triangles. We had to differentiate between the urban wastewater and the industrial wastewater, because industrial wastewater, in our case, has higher concentration of chlorides. So groundwater was related to high concentrations of calcium and nitrates. The wastewater was related to chloride, and the runoff from the headwater had low concentration of the 3 of them. Here we can see the results for the end-member mixing analysis. So this is a ternary diagram. So in each vortex we have a source. Here is the groundwater, here is the headwater, and here is the wastewater. And each dot represents a sample. So the closer the sample is to the vortex, the more this source contributes to the sample, the more the source contributes to the sample. So in the upper diagrams, we have here samples that come from small tributaries, which were mostly located in the zone 1. Here we have samples that come from the main tributary of the Doña River, which is the Gotarra. And then we have samples that come from zone 1 and zone 2. So here we can see how in the samples that come from the zone 1, most of the samples are related to the headwater source, but also the groundwater source can be important. And here we can see more or less the same result. So groundwater is important for these samples too. But in the plot that is in the bottom, which is a plot from the samples that come from the ONIAR's main scores, all the zones are included. And what we see here is that when zone 3 is also included, the contribution of the wastewater is higher, and it becomes really important. So we can find an average 50% or 40–50% of the contribution of the wastewater in this plot. So to summarize, in this chapter, we identified 3 main water sources, which were the headwater runoff, the groundwater base flow, and the urban and industrial wastewater. We also understood that groundwater is an important resource for this basin, even though the sampling was done in a very dry period, and that wastewater is also important for sustaining the flow. But this comes with a trade-off because the wastewater can have an effect of worsening the quality of the water. Okay, so with all the knowledge we had now of the basin, in the last chapter we wanted to develop and apply a SWOT plus model to model the current conditions and to project some alternative scenarios. We used a combination of existing records and our field monitoring data, and we used the SWOT plus model because the SWOT plus model is known for its flexibility and the possibility of add human activities like management operations that we know are relevant for our basin. So as inputs of the model, we use elevation, land cover, and soil data, as well as rainfall and temperature data. We also included the management operations, which are the irrigation, the crop rotation, and the volumes of the waste analyzed. To compare the model outputs with observed data, we used data from the Catalan Water Agency, so we used the data from the Girona gauging station, but also from 2 control points in the middle of the basin. And we used our own data from the field monitoring, so we had a control point here in the middle of the basin and another one in the headwaters. The idea is that data at different subbasins will help us to better calibrate and validate the hydrological conditions across the basin. Okay, so first, we run a sensitivity analysis using the Morris screening method to identify the parameters that are more important for the simulation. Then we use the latent hypercube sampling method for generate combinations of these parameters. And we chose the best combination using a combination of different goodness of fit functions. So when we had our model calibrated and validated, we simulated alternative scenarios that include scenarios related to land use and management practices, but also climate change scenarios. And we compared them. Okay, so what we see here is the results for the outlet point. In this hydrograph, we have the observed data in black, and we have the model output during the calibration period here in orange, and for the validation period here in blue. What we found is that the model satisfactorily predicted flows, and the peak timing was correctly simulated. But when we check for the lowest flows that are indicated by this goodness of fit function, the KGA for low flows, we found that we didn't reach satisfactory results. This can be better observed here in these 2 flow duration curves. So here we have the calibration and the validations, and we can see that low flows are overestimated, even though medium flows and higher flows are correctly simulated. We obtained similar results for other points, for the other points that we used for calibration and validation. Okay. So now that we had our model calibrated and validated, we did the scenarios. From all the set of scenarios, I will be showing you the climatic scenarios because those were the ones that produced a more relevant response in the stream flow. So for the climatic scenario, we used the EPCC projection, in particular the fossil fuel development scenario, which is the scenario in which economic growth is occurring at a fast rate and is depending on fossil fuels. So it's the worst case scenario. And for making our projection more robust, we use an ensemble of 11 models. So we wanted to simulate this model with and without wastewater treatment plants to test the response that the basin have and the dependence of this on these effluents, the dependence that the basin could have on these effluents. Here we can see the results. So we have flow duration curves here for the scenario with wastewater treatment plants, and here for the scenario without wastewater treatment plants. In each plot, we have 3 lines. So the black line is the observed data for the current period, so from 2012 to 2022. The red line is the line from the baseline simulation of SWAT, so the simulation for the 2012-2022 period. And in blue, we have the projected climate simulation. So the blue line is a median of all the ensemble of climatic models, and the shadow, the blue shadow that is associated to the blue line, is the uncertainty that is related with the climatic model that you are using. So what we can see in these graphs is that for the high flows in both scenarios, we have a high uncertainty that is related to the climatic model. So this shadow is white. But in the scenario with wastewater treatment plants, this variability of the blue shadow disappears for the lower flows. So in this case, what we are seeing is that wastewater treatment plants are producing the whole response, or are controlling the response, sorry, in the lower flows, in the lowest flows. So this doesn't happen for the model without wastewater treatment plants. Here we can see that the variability is still there. But what we can see in this model that doesn't have the effluence of the wastewater treatment plants is that not even the worst case scenario can reproduce the observed conditions, the conditions that we are already experiencing. So in general, we calibrated and validated a SWAT plus model for the current conditions, but it has limitations for low flows. From all the scenarios, climate change and wastewater treatment plants changes are the most relevant. And this model has limitations under drought conditions because it underestimates the very dry conditions and the low flow processes. Overall, the results of this thesis help us answer 3 questions. The first one is, what are the observed and projected changes in hydrological patterns? The second one, how does the relationship between hydrological processes and water chemistry vary across different scales? And the third one, how will a changed climate modify the relationship between hydrological processes and water chemistry? So evidence from chapters 1, 3, and 4 shows that the system has critically low discharges and frequent intermittency, that there is an increasing role of wastewater inputs, and that these trends will continue. Something that agrees with Mediterranean and arid systems trends. Evidence from chapters 1, 2, and 3 shows that at the basin scale, intermittency is worsening quality. But at the site scale, we see patchy and variable effects of the same intermittency. So we need a multi-scale approach for understanding this. Finally, evidence from chapters 3 and 4 imply that the river capacity to dilute pollutants is diminishing and will continue diminishing, that there's more accumulation, and that we don't know how the system will behave with multiple extreme events. So there could be a limited resilience of the system that can produce unpredictable dynamics. These results have some practical management implications, sorry. So data taken across multiple scales can inform monitoring because it can allow us to track hydrological connectivity, something that we need to better understand intermittency. And intermittency will be the new normal, so we need to better understand it. On the other hand, suspended chlorophyll could be used as a biological indicator in these systems. This type of data at multiple scales also enhance model calibration and validation and allow us to separate the influence of different drivers in a spatially manner. Finally, the results highlight the importance of how they contribute is relevant to the nitrogen control. Finally, the fact that we can spatially separate different drivers could be an important tool for detecting hotspots and where a certain measure should be implemented. Well, with the permission of the committee, I will now read my conclusions. So, first, the Onyar's reverse discharge has declined by 48% since the 2000, with fewer high flow events. Concurrently, water quality has degraded, with nitrate and ammonium concentrations rising since 2007. Reduced stream flow is driven by climate change, land use shift, and groundwater abstraction. The increase in nutrients is linked to wastewater inputs and aquifer pollution. Agriculture and urban effluents are the primary sources of nitrogen and phosphorus. In contrast, algal biomass, chlorophyll A, is mainly controlled by climatic variables and phosphorus levels. The impacts of these drivers varies across the basin. The river's water sources change spatially. Headwater runoff dominate upstream, groundwater in the middle, and wastewater becomes significant downstream. Both groundwater and wastewater are crucial for maintaining flow, but are also key sources of pollution. Models predict critical challenges. Changing precipitation could further reduce stream flow, which will frequently drop below ecological threshold. Wastewater will become essential just to maintain minimum river flow. These projected hydrological alterations and increased effluent dependency will exacerbate the present water quality issues and may further destabilize the river hydrological regime. In general, hydrological shifts from climate and land use change create complex links between river flow, water chemistry, and ecology. At the basin scale, low flow reduces dilution capacity, amplifying the ecosystem impact of human pressures and groundwater pollution. At the local scale, stream intermittency drives patchy and unpredictable nutrient patterns. Understanding this stress system requires a multi-scale approach, integrating both local and basin-wide perspective. Thank you. I would like to thank all the funding entities, the University of Girona, ICRA, and most of that. I would like to thank the people that has helped me done this work, my supervisors and the people that has come to the field with me, that has helped me in the lab. Everyone that is here today, thank you. Voy a estar aquí. Sí. A ver.
Bé, crec que us ho vaig dir, no? Però no m'heu fet cas. No? Jo entenc que la Mediterrània són molt passionals i molt sentimentals, i estem cap a l'aplaudiment i estem a la part d'agraïments, però bé, intentarem oblidar-lo, ja sé que teniu ganes de fer-ho. No repercutirà. Okay, thank you very much for your short and precisely presentation, and we are going to start the second part of the academic event. And we will start with Dr. Olivier Ribolsi. This is your time for make comments, ask questions, and I think that's...
Maybe it will be too high.
No, that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me the floor. I'm delighted and honored to be part of this jury of your defense, Gabriela. First, I would like to say that I enjoy very much the reading of your manuscript, which I found very well structured, illustrated, written with rigor, and really it was a pleasure to read your report. Like your thesis present, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Like your presentation, well illustrated and informative. I've learned many things by reading your report and hearing what you said. I greatly appreciated your approach, which is systemic, multi-scale, and interdisciplinary. That's complex. And for me, this needs to have like a maturity. And looks like that you are mature for that. And so thank you.
Thank you.
I have some questions, not so many. There are no traps. And just, I see it like discussions. Maybe some of my questions are not relevant, so forget. First, I question myself when reading your report, State of the Art and Chapters. There was not something missing, I will not say missing, but let's say features related to the geomorphology, basic features. Like the first one is, in fact, I was mostly asking myself, because I'm not really a specialist in intermittency, but when you look at the profile along of a river, you have steps and so on, a variability like that. So do you think the profile along of your river that you studied and in general may affect, have a control on intermittency? And I have just another question which is related to the first one. That's also related to the geomorphology. Do you think hill slopes, curvature, I mean by that if it's converging, diverging, and so on, do you think this might also control in some way the groundwater contribution or the stream, hill slope water pass, and then also determine intermittency in your study case and more generally speaking?
Okay, thank you. Well, I do think that topography and geomorphological factors are relevant especially in the very local scale, for determining intermittency. But I mean, as we had a very complex basin where human activities were so strong controllers of stream flow patterns, what I think is that even if the geomorphological features give us like, how to say it, like a base of the system, of how the system works physically. The relevance of these morphological structures, or how the hill slope is structured, can be very relevant. But even in the headwaters, the Oñar has some crops, it has fruit trees. Well, humans have been around this area for so long that I do think that the human influence is higher. But yeah, of course, if you have a more concave structure, it will retain better the humidity, and probably this bridge can reconnect faster if it's humid and it has more converging flow paths. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. I know that you mostly worked during interstorm periods, but and it's also related to geomorphological processes. I was asking myself if, and that's just to open the discussion. During storm events, we might have changes in the morphology of stream bed and the active river channel and so on. And so it's just, I was also asking myself, when reading your work, if this also could have an effect on the control of intermittency then after the storm flow period, during the interstorm flow period, and if it may change in space the places where you might have pools or no pools. So, yeah, just I would like to know if you have any idea or if you thought about that when working on your topic.
Well, yes, because, well, while we were working, some of the ridges we were working with, they have very mobile stream beds. So sediments are mostly sand. And we, even if we didn't have like a big flood event, we saw how the active channel changed. And sometimes it was an inconvenience because where we placed the lever logger, the water won't be passing through it, but on the other side. And we also saw how very small, very small very small sediment or structural things like a sand barrel. When we are having these low flows that are of 1 liter per second or things like this, they are controlling a lot of the dynamics we see. But of course, these again happen at a very small scale. If it could change intermittency, well, it probably can change in a ridge where a pool it's formated, and if this pool will last longer or no. But at a bigger scale, this intermittency depends on the subsurface processes mostly. So on the water table levels for instance. And yeah, I don't know how much of a big control could be the change in the active
Okay.
river channel for the for the intermittency.
By local scale, you mean headwaters?
I mean,
When you say local scale,
when I say
you mean
local
you
scale, I mean a reach, inside
Irish.
a reach,
Okay.
a reach.
Okay. Thank you. I will maybe move to next question, maybe more methodological one,
Okay.
as related to the first scientific chapter published in Limnaticra.
Okay.
Just you observe the trends. You show us the trends, the cuts, and I saw that there was forest. I'm just curious. You said that you have more irrigation and afforestation. What kind of forest is it? Is it natural regrowth?
Yes.
Is it planted?
It is natural regrowth.
Okay, that's. And then for the methodological question, so you use the traditional Mankendal and Petit tests, and I'm just. Do you think that you might have used other types of method, maybe less statistical based and more process-based method, so to make the link between the trends, the breakpoints, and the change in the landscapes and in terms of land use and so on?
Okay.
There is no, don't worry, there is just...
No, yes, I get your point, because what we have with the statistical trends analysis is if something is increasing or decreasing. How much is that influencing the pattern we are observing? We don't know. That's true. There are other methods, like the ones that try to reproduce the natural stream flow, or only the climate-driven changes on stream flow. That's true. But I think when it comes to comparing even those more process-based approaches to what we are seeing, and to differentiate how much is climate, how much is land use, I still think it will be complicated, because the effects are going in different directions. So we have drivers that are taking water out of the system. Could be evapotranspiration from the forest, or the water abstraction. But at the same time, what we observed in the trend analysis is that there are other drivers that are adding water to the system, and water that comes from another system, that is the Ter River, well, another, yeah. So,
How about using SWAT Plus?
well, the problem with using SWAT Plus is that, as I showed, the land use has changed a lot during these years, and I think we don't have enough data of how this change has been, because we have 4 maps, or 5 maps, sorry, of different moments that are snapshots of the land use. But I don't know if that will be enough, because SWAT Plus needs a lot of data for the correct calibration of the model. But I guess it could be, and one can try to use it, and then to check what are the limitations. That's true. That's true.
Okay. I'm not moving along the line of my question. We are speaking about SWAT Plus. I was just, when looking at your presentation, thinking about calibration validation of your model. That's just hydrological calibration validation.
Yes.
Okay, and then you use the model to simulate what happened with the nutrients too.
No, only with the stream flow. And then
Okay.
the part of connecting it with the nutrients, I do it more like in the discussion part.
Okay. And because we are here, I remember mixing analysis based on trying to estimate the contributions of N members, the 3 N members. Among those, there is groundwater. Is there, is it what you observed with the percentage that you observed using the N-member mixing analysis, is it consistent with what you simulate with SWAT Plus?
Well,
Just this, because I read the chapter 6, and then we move to chapter 7, and then I know that SWAT Plus simulates groundwater, and that's an issue. You say that. It's just, did you check, or what?
well, when I was compiling the results, for me, everything was like a confirmation of the other result. I mean, when I was joining them all together, for me, all of them are very consistent in what they are concluding. I didn't check exactly how much of the wastewater in the same point that I measured the N-member mixing analysis was the same that we see in the water balance that SWAT Plus outputs give us. I mean, I think it's a good idea to check how much they differ. Just
Could be maybe a constraint for the model based on what you quantify, because low flow is not an easy period to simulate. You say it.
yes.
So,
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it could help us constrain a bit more the groundwater results, but maybe something that I also discussed in the thesis is that the version of SWAT Plus that I'm using, it has a very simple approach to groundwater, but I think the exercise could be done at least for the wastewater.
okay.
That's a good idea.
Okay. About N-member mixing analysis, I wanted to tell you that in general, this is a method that is used for hydrograph separations during storm events, and you use it to interpret what happens in interstorm periods at several places. And I was interesting to look at that, and I think it's clever and yeah, nice approach.
Thank you.
Maybe the question I had is about the tracer.
Stability, conservativity.
Yeah.
Yes. You mean the
Yeah,
nitrates?
so I know that's it's not easy to get the super conservative tracer, but just do you have any, because okay, nitrate, you have denitrification, calcium, you have carbonate precipitation or dissolution, and so on. So that's just, you have maybe an idea of what error propagations you may have in your percentage, for example, groundwater percentage estimates because of these uncertainty.
Yes, this is something we discussed quite a lot for the nitrates because we are aware that we didn't have like something that help us estimate how much is the nitrifying or nitrifying the ammonium from the wastewater. And The thing is that the groundwater of this basin has concentrations of nitrates of more than 100 milligrams per liter. So it is for sure the main contributor of the nitrates in the basin, because the concentrations that can be added through other ways will be less concentrated. What we did to try to solve a bit this issue of the conservativity of the nitrate is that we vary during the EMA approach. We did not only one run, but we did several runs, varying the composition of the end members. So what we saw when we varied the compositions to plausible compositions that can come from the wastewater and from the runoff is that our conclusions were robust. So we saw a variability on the results, a difference in the results of 1%. So that's why we had a more certainty on it.
Well, I will have one last question, and then after I will give the floor to my colleagues. And I know that you made a huge efforts to collect samples in the field, 23 points, if I remember well, and several monthly campaigns during 1 year. So I know that's huge. I'm doing lots of field work too, so I know the effort it takes to do that. But theoretically, if you had the possibility to sample more stations, ideally, what would you suggest, and where, and with what kind of method? Do you have? First, maybe that's not an issue for you. Maybe you would say, why 23 is enough? So that's the first maybe part of the question. And then, if not, if you think we could improve the knowledge by having more points, what would you suggest? What kind of approaches?
Okay. Well, maybe I think more than having more points, I would like to have more temporal coverage of the sampling, because as something that we don't have in our data is peaks and periods where there were high flows. In part because, well, it was a draw, but also because planning a sampling that occurs during a peak is more complicated, because you need to be very aware of that need to have it in your mind and to have everything prepared. So that's something I would like to expand, if I could, like the temporal coverage, maybe additional to the monthly sampling, having these samplings that are more related to climatic events. So if you are checking the weather and then you see that it will come the spring rains, you are ready to go and sample maybe for several days in a row, or for 2 weeks or something like this, to have a better representation of that. On the other hand, I think that for some periods it will be interesting to have an spatial coverage, but maybe if we had the money and everything, it will be interesting to have something more continuous, like, for example, using drones or something like this to map the rest of the watershed So we have a continuous map of the hydrological connectivity.
From what I saw, hotspots looks like they are mainly in headwaters of the streams, low order streams. That's huge, in fact, I'm sure in your, and so maybe, because it's also a question I have. Headwaters, low order streams, 1, 2, 3, they are huge in length. I mean, sometimes it's 80% of the total length of a hydrographic network. So is it a place where we should put more efforts because they are specific, they are hotspots, and there are maybe specific important hydrobiogeochemical processes that happen there, and how to do that? That's the question. Maybe following one flow line from upstream to downstream and concentrate and have more stations all along. I don't know. Yeah. Also, you said yeah, that would be important to have a more frequent sampling during storm events. But the question is how it propagates from upstream to downstream, so which means it's also an issue in space, in fact. Yeah. So, I don't know. Low-cost sensors, citizen science approach,
Yes.
maybe.
Yes, that's true. Think sensors that can measure nutrients, optical sensors, while they are available, some of them are available already. They have this high cost, but I think there's people working on doing them cheaper, and that will be nice to have, like a network of sensors. And I agree with you that monitoring headwaters is important, and that we should put an effort on that, because it's true that maybe we see that they are dry most of the time, but they have a lot of information. So we had the luck of having one control point from an experimental gauging station in the headwaters, and I think that's something that that needs to continue. I mean, works like this can give it like a breeze of air to activate it for a moment, but that is important to have a consciousness that the more we have this data and that we maintain it, the better, because later that can inform real life decisions or help us answer our scientific questions. But yeah, I think it would be great if we could expand those efforts to have more things in there. And there's one thing that I was thinking also for trying to solve this issue of sampling during storms. That was something that I saw in the experimental catchment that you have. That is this system that when the peak starts rising, it starts taking the samples automatically. That will be, I think that will be very nice to have also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Now is the turn for Isabel Muñoz.
Well, good morning. Yes, better? Good morning. Well, I join the congratulations of my colleague, Dr. Rivolzi, about your thesis, and also for your presentation that I think I synthesized very well the contents of your thesis. I think that your document reflects the hard work that you have done in the field, in the in the laptop, no, with doing your modelizations, your statistical tools, and I think that altogether show that you have learned a lot. You have increased your knowledge in this topic, and also you have achieved a lot of skills during this PhD process. And that is, I think, is the goal, no? The objective of this period of formation for the young scientists. And then your work reflects very well this process. Then I congratulate a lot for this result. Well, of course, I have some questions, some curiosities that I will we ask you. And well, I start with the first chapter. Well, I have also to congratulate you about the common parts of the thesis, the introduction and the discussion, but because you have also done a very good work, synthesizing and also linking the results from the different chapters. Well, regarding the first chapter, I have a curiosity. You mentioned that in this catchment, you observed that a consistent change point around the 2000 year in the runoff, is a decrease in the runoff coefficient. But you also mentioned in the chapter that in other basins like the Tagus or in the Pyrenees, this change is observed 20 years before. And the curiosity is why this long difference in the period to observe this difference, because I thought that climate change affect all the basins, but not with this difference in the period. But this is a curiosity. What is the reason? You know?
Well, not 100% sure, but I think maybe it could be also related to the scale of the basins I'm comparing there, because maybe I'm comparing the Oñar with basins that are bigger, way bigger. So maybe in those basins, the afforestation process has been occurring in Europe in general for since the middle of the century, last century. Maybe in those basins it occurred earlier, or maybe it was more important, more relevant because they are bigger and maybe they have more forests or mountainous areas. I'm thinking maybe something like that could be related to the differences in the changing point. But yeah, it's true that I don't know if there could be like another thing different from because as you said, regional climate patterns maybe are similar there and here. So maybe it's more related to another type of processes with the land cover or with the distribution of the different land uses.
Probably. I don't remember how was this part, no, of Girona 20 years ago. Perhaps it's true that industries and agriculture is higher in these last 20 years than in other catchments, no, in other basins. Well, it was a real curiosity. Okay. Well, regarding the chapter 5, when I read this chapter, this result suggests that the catchment, this catchment, but also many others intermittent catchments, no, is more a discontinuous succession of pools and not a real river, no, not a real continuous river. And this makes me a question, no, that should we therefore adapt our sampling methodology for these special or these different intermittent rivers that are characterized by these continuous pools? And then my question is, do you have any idea? Do you think that, for example, what you say in your memory, okay, we have found more relationships with suspended chlorophyll, but not forget the benthic. That it's true. But what do you think about that we have to modify or to add some additional parameters to measure in the rivers in order to have more information about the relationship between more ecological parameters or processes and these changes in hydrology or in chemistry and so on? What do you think about it?
Yes. Well, I think over the last 2 decades or the last decade, intermittent rivers have become a very important topic, and we are moving from a conceptualization of a river as we know to the recognition of these intermittent systems as something that happen worldwide and that are important and that we need to look with a different view. So we need to maybe have different indicators, like biological indicators, as I suggest that maybe suspended chlorophyll should be included, because if we have this usual behavior of having pools, it may be relevant as to have this indicator that was more thought for a lenthic system, not a lotic one. And this effort is also being done with other things like the ecological flows. So ecological flows for intermittent rivers are not the same as for permanent rivers. Sorry. So this is something that that people are already considering for monitoring these systems, like how we do a monitoring that considers the difference with permanent systems and that really informs us of the ecological status. For me, I don't know if it was curious or not, the fact that we couldn't find the relationship with the benthic chlorophyll, because benthic chlorophyll, it varies a lot, and that's why I mentioned that we don't have to forget it, and that well, also we had the condition in our river that many stream beds were sand, so benthic chlorophyll becomes more difficult to measure. But what we find is that there's a lot, well, it's highly eutrophied, so we see a lot of these mats of algae. That it's something that is also difficult to use as an indicator, because I don't know exactly how to measure it. But that could also be important, just to have both the suspended indicator, which is an indicator of when the system is disconnected, and the other one when the system is connected. But we have to have indicators that are maybe seasonal dependent or hydrological connectivity status dependent. And we have, yes, to have different indicators than for permanent rivers.
Yes, and on the other hand, your work is more focused on the water column, and then if you you try to find relationships between chemical parameters like nutrients. It's true that probably something diluted in the, or not diluted, sorry, but suspended in the water column could be more relationship with these other parameters. That probably we need to include in this model something more related to the particulate part, no? The things that are on the bentos, on the sediment, that also have an important role in the ecological processes that are in the river. That is difficult, of course. If we don't have enough consistency with the models, using only the part of in the water column, then include also the particulate part or the suspended part. This is a huge objective, but probably is this the reason. But if we want to use these models or general models in order to show more or less the global functioning of a basin, then perhaps we have to introduce from the biological point of view some of these indicators that could be more related with these changes at the global basin and in the water column. No? That is. Well, in this chapter, I think there are also another thing for me really interesting, that is the characterization of the river aquifer connectivity that you say that appears to be more relevant, no, than fragmentation or intermittency. But I think the relevance is limited to explaining some hydrological characteristics. But do you think that you could extend this relevance for biological aspects? Because in this part, you don't connect with the chlorophyll. You also explain relationship with hydrology. But do you think that it's possible to relate with chlorophyll too? This relationship between river and aquifer connectivity.
Okay.
Or do you think they have connections that is important for chlorophyll to have this connectivity between aquifer and river or surface water?
Well, I think yeah. Well, in an indirect manner, maybe because the connection between aquifer and the surface water, as we saw, will have a huge effect on the water chemistry and the nutrient conditions, and also in the flow conditions. So, in a sense, yes, they are connected, and it's also true that the descriptors we use to quantify these relationships were a bit rough. So we don't know if maybe having a more detailed description, of this relationship, it could have a better predictable capacity for the suspended chlorophyll, because they are related in this way, no? So, well, because what we saw so far is that, at least for the benthic part, it is where we were not able to find. Yeah, it was like it was not that relevant, because at the end it was more like the nutrient itself the one that dictated, and the seasonality, the connection with the model. But yes, we don't know if maybe doing a better description, it could be, or having better description of the hydrological, like the stream flows, or maybe another type of descriptor, it can be correlated.
Okay. Well, moving to the next, the chapter 6, you comment that, you propose or comment that the stream water quality depends on technological advances in water treatment, no, in the implementation of nature-based solutions. And this is true, of course, and also, as you mentioned, that wastewater seems to play an important role, no, in maintaining this low flows in intermittent rivers. Then you recommend this, but I think, do you think this is possible, or it's easy or difficult to implement in the short term? These proposals that you mentioned.
Well, we have seen some examples here in ICRA of real cases of implementation and modernization of these wastewater facilities. I think a lot of work is being done in this type of development of technologies. So, well, the thing is that we also need to consider not only the increase in these technologies, because but also the dilution capacity of the river. So maybe it will be difficult, because even if the technology is advancing a lot, maybe the level that it has of removal of the nutrients and increasing on the quality of the water is still not enough to be diluted whatever is left in the river. So maybe in that sense, it could be difficult to implement. But well, I think it's something that needs to be done, because we have a lot of evidence that the wastewater needs to be managed, because it is a vital resource for our river. We cannot treat it only as wastewater, but it is also an opportunity to improve the quality of our rivers, or the functions of them.
In any case, we have to do, because if the water is for the intermittent rivers coming from the wastewater treatment plants, we need to improve the quality. That it's okay. Well, the SWOT model. Okay, you say SWOT model has limitations.
Yes.
A lot, and well, I have I involve in different projects or in different works, so theses and so on, using the SWOT, and all the time say, okay, SWOT has limitations, and we have problems to do this with using SWOT and so on. And well, my question is there any alternative model available that give the same information or better information from the SWOT, or not? Or we have to continue working with this model, and also saying that, okay, but we have these limitations, and for example, for the low flows, there is no a good resolution, and so on. What is your opinion? Or do you know any other models, that you are in this field now?
Well, I think, well, there are a lot of hydrological models. I think most of them, well, I don't think maybe there's a model that won't struggle with reproducing all types of flows, because when you are developing the model, you have to target, okay, I want to focus on the high flows, I want to focus like on having a median overall good outcome, or I want to focus on the low flows. And you try to balance that, but in the scenario that we have now, where we have so many extremes, I think any model will struggle with reproducing that. Because what I saw in the field was less than 1 liter per second sometimes, or things like this that I was measuring, and even measuring there in with the small mill and with a lot of caution and doing replicas was difficult. Okay, but for answering your question, I think maybe maybe some, well, the thing with SWAT is that we need a better conceptualization of the groundwater, because the groundwater is very relevant in these low flow conditions also. And maybe we also need better inputs to overcome these limitations. Better inputs, I mean, if we already know that wastewater is very important, maybe we need a very good resolution on the data that we have about the wastewater effluents, because I only consider the urban ones, but there's also industrial ones, as I mentioned, and you need to have those data to improve the model. And of course, if you improve SWAT to now have the groundwater module and to have a connection with other models that are dedicated to groundwater, like the mud flow, it could become better, these limitations, but at the same time, you need more data. And for physically based, fully distributed models, you need a lot of data. So I think at the end, also the limits on the models are limits on the data we have and the observed data, and the way we have, and the way we can compare what the model is doing and how it is producing an outcome with real data, maybe not only of stream flow, but also of other things.
Well, disconnect with my last question, more or less. Thank you. Well, I'd like to congratulate you also for the part of the discussion that you propose several recommendations and actions for improve the management of this basin. I think is a good work for a PhD to think in this part of the transference of the science, no, from the science to the management. And also, of course, you mentioned a lot of recommendation of actions to do, like this one, that to have more data, to have more measures at different scales, or so on. But the reality is that from science, we always recommend a lot of multiple, or we say, okay, we need more data, we need more of all, no? Or it's necessary to do to reduce, for example, the sites where we are monitoring, and so on. And then my question is, okay, how to find an equilibrium, no? That is, from all your recommendations, if you have to go now to the water agency and say, okay, for this basin, what is the things that we have to do first? That is a rank of all your recommendations. What do you think are the most important, or the most, or which ones you recommend directly to the managers?
Okay. Yes, I think I agree with you that doing this exercise of going more to the practical part was very insightful for me, because it helped me see more value on the work I did. And when it will come to a real hypothetical scenario of going and giving a recommendation, I would like to say that in this basin, a better control of point sources pollution, it's very relevant, because I don't think we have enough data of the effluents that are not from urban facilities. So for me, that will be point number one, because you can also like externalize the cost. You can give it to the industries, and you can say, okay, now you need to give me this data, and you can make controls of how different this data is to what they are reporting to you. But that could be a way to start, because yeah, we saw how bad was the river when the industrial inputs come to it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your answers, and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, Isabel. Well, now it's my turn. Hope to be brief and to the point. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate for this piece of work, also to the 3 supervisors. I agree with Isabel that it's, there's 3 accepted papers and 1 more or less submitted, I guess, or at least working on it, no? So it means that it's, it's already what we call a PhD thesis by chapters that are papers. And I like also this piece of work, because sometimes when you are reading a PhD by chapters that are accepted in a journal, you'll lose a lot of things in the introduction or a structure of the PhD thesis. And here we have a nice structure, so that's quite important if you are, trying to give an idea of what is happening in this PhD thesis. Second thing, quite important, Doñar River. I think you mentioned at the first time of your presentation, in fact, congrats for your presentation was so short, to the point, and it's quite difficult for a lot of things that are included in the thesis just to make this short presentation. Could you please remember me the 3 reasons why you choose the Doñar? I think you said Mediterranean.
Intermittent. And chronically stressed by.
A lot of key stressors, I think so. But it's not a joke, but we have 3 reasons seated in the first row. And it's an ecologist,
Yes.
a gemophologist,
It sounds like
and
a joke.
hydrogeologist.
Yes.
So that's the 3 reasons. Because, you are so brave to dig into the Oñar River for all these reasons, but especially, because one of the things I'm happy to with the thesis is you are trying to understand not only what is happening in the surface streams, you are trying to connect it with the groundwater. And that's really a very important key point that is almost forgotten in the literature, because it's quite difficult to understand these hydraulic connections between the surface and the groundwater. And it's quite important because I'm moving to the groundwater, especially in the Balearic Islands, and it's quite important for water resources management. And that's a key point. But at the same time, it's a trap. I mean, it's because it's quite difficult. I mean, if you have over-exploitation, over-extraction, obviously groundwater level decline and disconnected these streams. You say, in one moment, you said intermittency is the new normal. No. The degree of intermittency is the new normal. Because if we're in the Mediterranean, temporal intermittency is not the normal, because there is no average in the Mediterranean areas. We have droughts, we have wet periods, we have movement, but it's really the degree of intermittency in both sense, increasing because we have wastewater, or decreasing because we have over-extractions and all these things. So, yeah, more things. Fieldwork, 23 sites, May 21, July 22, except for the piezometers, December 21, April 23. No, it's true. And quite important, the drought conditions. The mean average rainfall, I think it's 1 standard deviation less than the median. So it's, I mean, if I remember, was the worst conditions in Catalonia, probably, just for water sampling. So it's something like well, we are going to take care of the low flows, but the low flows are extremely low because we're in a quite a normal situation. And it's not like, I mean, I think it's quite important because you are sampling, and that's life. I mean, you can trying to catch some floods, and maybe you have a couple of years with no floods, and that's quite difficult. 34 years ago, probably, in the research group in Barcelona, we have a mission that it's raining, we have to go to take samples. And probably, yes, it's the thing that you should complete just to try to catch up. My colleagues said some medium or high flows. But I mean, in the sense of the field work, it's okay. You've done, I mean, probably always we want to have more data and different situations, but I mean, in this sense, the thesis is great. I'm a geographer, so scale. Yeah, figure 3.48, page 45. Who decided these 3 scales? You or your supervisors? I mean, when you have rich scale, segment. I prefer rich scale, 100 meters, okay?
Yes.
Second one, sub-basin scale, from 1.8 square kilometers to 225 square kilometers. And the third one, we close the system, Oñar and Girona. Why these differences between surfaces? You decided with an, I don't know, Strahler, or that was a sampling design?
Well, we look at the map, and we wanted to have everything we could represent it for the sampling points. So we wanted to have points in the headwaters, we had to have points after the wastewater treatment plants, before. So we decided the sampling sites, and they are so different in sizes. The size range comes from this to this because we were guided more also for the important. So we decided together, and well, mainly with Pep, that he already knows the basin a lot. So he could guide me on which.
Are you okay?
Are you okay? We are almost there. In the sorry, yeah.
I mean, it's
In
Pep's
which
fault.
points could
Pep's fault. I mean, Pep
It's-
was the most responsible.
if it's something bad, what you're about to say, it's petful. No.
You can do it. You can do it. I mean, you can blame your supervisor. Yeah, sure. So it was something like a kind of design. You see the basin. You say you choose that, and that's it.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
because it's quite important, the topic of scale, especially not for the first paper, but for the other one. Yeah.
But at the end we had all the scales represented. So when we decided which points were interesting, and we went to visit them to check that what we see in the map is easy to sample, that we can get there. Then we checked the coverage, like the drainage area, and we said, okay, this covers different sizes, so we can consider that it could be representative of the different scales that we want to include.
Yeah, because Oliver mentioned before the importance of geomorphology. And having a look to the thesis, I think there are a couple of granulometric profiles because they were used for the ECRAS modeling, but probably I guess that the texture of the bed is completely different in the upstream of headwaters and flowing downstream. And probably, yeah, it's an area, abrir un melón, no? You know, it's this expression in Spanish. But probably, yeah, it's something to follow. Okay, that's geomorphology and yes, for classification. So try to tackle this scale dependency. Okay. First paper, hydrological trends. I like it a lot because with Ramon we did several things similar in other places. About the petit test, and this is quite important. If I remember well, because it was a few years ago, when you are analyzing a trend, petit does give you an idea of the changing point, but it doesn't mean that that year is quite important. It's the changing point is the difference between two trends, the first period and the second period. Sometimes with the petit test, you get 2 or 3 points, and it's a mess. So it's only if you only have one and it's representative, it means like the period before is completely different to the new period. But, and that's important. We are analyzing groundwater levels in Menorca, and we have a similar thing around 2000. Oh. In our case, it's increasing. I'm not quite sure, but probably in some cases, if you are decreasing the irrigation areas for, what's the name of PAC in English, for the agriculture, I don't know, you know, what's PAC? It's all the methods in agriculture and of the money that the European give,
Okay.
the common agricultural policy or something like that. That changed a lot in the whole country. But it's, yeah, I was thinking the same, what is happening, yeah, but it's quite difficult because you only have a data for the whole basin, and that's the thing. But I mean, it's quite important. But what about groundwater levels, Pep? I guess ACA has some water levels, not the mobile, water levels. That's good. Groundwater levels. ACA should have some piezometers with an historical records, just for 2.
2 in the alluvial aquifer and others in the neogene aquifer.
Yeah, because I mean, why did you not include it in the hydrological trends? Just for testing, if it was about groundwater. Yeah, because there is a map, but it's the 6 piezometers that you installed for the other papers. But at some point, I thought, I mean, if you're including the groundwater, why not? But I mean, I'll leave it there. It's something like a duty or task for carry out.
Yes. Well, we did include the groundwater recharge estimated from the SIMPA model.
Yeah. But it's the SIMPA.
But it's the SIMPA, yes. So it's a tick point.
Because another way to see that is just to make a simple water balance and the variation of accumulation. You have precipitation, evapotranspiration, and discharge, and probably make in a long series what is happening. Obviously, there will be some differences between you have a lot of water extractions, but just to resolve the importance of the groundwater. Another question about the surface and groundwater flow dynamics. I like very much this figure 1.2.
Okay.
Is yours or is a copy of some classical book?
No, it's ours. We thought a lot of how to do it with my supervisors, and yeah, I had some help for drawing it, but like for making it pretty, I mean, but the idea came from our discussion. Yeah, but it's ours.
Because I mean, getting modern, but because the old book, faction books, and the Custodio and company, it's something like that's connections. But I mean, it's old fashioned, and it's nice just to show these relationships. Second paper, the complex interactions between hydrology and human activities, and that's quite difficult just to try to make guilties. I mean, this is responsible of that, and it's,
of course.
Yeah. There are several methods, but with your experience, what is your, recommendation when you are trying to elucidate which is responsible of these differences?
You mean in the machine learning chapter, no? I think my first recommendation will be to not include every variable that you can include in a model just because machine learning can do it all. You don't include everything. You have to include things that make sense. Of course, it's not a causal analysis, so it's still more exploratory and correlation. So you have to have caution, but still it can give us insights of things that make sense as first recommendation.
I mean, because you have increment of temperature.
Yes.
You have afforestation. You have water abstraction from the groundwater. You have the wastewater treatment plants. So there is a lot of stressors that are acting at the same time and not always correlated.
Yeah. Exactly. They have co-founding effects.
That's it. And you show up the high variability at the headwaters. And I think it's what's a topic that you suggested. And it's, I think in the States, I can remember if it's a paper of Alden and Rui about the abandon of the first stream gauge stations in the States. And so we are forgetting the headwaters and leave it alone, or making a process of urbanization. And so where is starting the flow, the zero stream. So that's quite important. I think we should look at the headwaters with because there is a lot of answers, and it's it's the first step in the sense of generating the stream flow. Third paper, water sources, but I don't know, because it's a paper in the Hydrological Processes journal.
Yes.
And no one said you that stream flow generation is more hydrological than, no? Nobody suggests to change the title?
They suggest to change the previous title. They change it to this one.
And you end up with this one.
Yes. Okay. It's true that the paper doesn't talk about mechanisms. It doesn't quantify mechanism. but well, at the end, it does give you a sense of which sources, and I didn't discuss mechanisms, but which sources and how things like base flow contribution could be relevant for the surface water we are seeing today.
So at the end, what you are trying to show up, tell us that the headwater are important, groundwater-based flow, and treated wastewater. No? So we are working on that. No? And so, I'm linking with the last paper, and she asked you about recommendations. So, reading the papers, maybe you think, well, you only have to recover groundwater levels, so reduce water abstraction. Quite difficult.
Yeah.
Quite difficult.
Yeah,
Not
quite
almost impossible. Well, I don't know. Maybe in Girona we can install a new desalination plant, and it's all ready, for example. But in the sense of water resources, is quite difficult. So you will have that problem. And the other problem is obviously the sewage water treatment plant. So again, and I'm asking like Isabel, what is your main recommendation? I mean, because if you are talking with the ACA and say, well, we have a problem and we are reducing naturally or more or less the medium and the maximum floods, but we have a problem with the low floods. No? So what we can do practically?
Yes.
With all the money of the world.
With all the money of the world. Wow.
But I mean, the sense of, this is my results from the water management.
Well, I think if we had all the money on the world and
Yeah.
all the political prioritization of this issue, then we should do what I told Isabel first. But, well, no, we can improve the wastewater treatment plants of the whole area. We can have more strict vigilance on the industrial effluents. We can characterize better these small alluvial formations that I'm talking about that are in the headwaters and that could be relevant to sustaining flow even there in drought conditions. So we could maybe check exactly where are they, how they work. We could try to protect them. We could put stricter measurements on irrigation. We could hire people to develop this model of the groundwater that is fully distributed. I mean, I think yes, many things could be done with the whole world.
You know that now we are in an open period for contribution from people to the hydrological plans, for the esquemas de temas importantes.
Yes.
So why not? I mean, it's an option for you just to contribute to some of these topics.
Yes, I read the impact that went out on July of this year. And for me, well, it was, I don't say nice, but I don't know which word to use, to see the name of the Oñar everywhere. Because when I search every topic, there was this river. So it's true that the results of the thesis are consistent with what authorities are also checking. And that there are some ideas in this document that, well, I think I had a paragraph on the discussion that the results can inform some of the practical measurements they want to include. So, yeah, it's true that it's a good idea to participate of these processes.
And I'm pretty sure that, I mean, all your results and all your thesis is comparable to other problems in other areas in the Mediterranean, because we have the same problems all around the world. Finalmente, ¿quieres decir algunas palabras en tu idioma que tienes ahí guardadas y que no sabes cómo decirlas?
Bueno, quizás quiero darle las gracias a las personas que me están viendo en el streaming, que yo sé que hay gente que son las 3 de la mañana en Colombia y ahí están. Entonces, muchísimas gracias y bueno, creo que this was a very nice discussion. I really thank you. Y bueno, tengo muchas cosas que decir, pero luego me pongo un poco emocional, pero muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí, de verdad.
No de aplausos, no.
No de aplausos.
Okay. Sorry about this, Colombia. Well, as an academic event, now is the turn for any doctor in the room who wants to make a comment. It's open discussion for the doctors. I see a couple of doctors, but you are not going to say nothing. So if you are not going to say nothing, we are going to move to the first row, to the three supervisors. If you want to talk, make some comments.
Thank you. Three things, or four things. I will be brief. First, thank you for coming to this Sabater test. We appreciate you came here to have this nice discussion. Because through this, thank you for coming here for a nice discussion. Because in this discussion, I have noticed that Gabriela understands the hydrological system. You have been tough, very polite, but he has answered the questions, and I see that he understands. And probably the fact of forming some students, educating some students, is not just doing things, repeating things, doing laboratory, but when you see that she understands if a hydrological system can be understood at all, because they are really, really heterogeneous, variable, whatever, she has shown that she understands how a hydrological system works, and this is important. I also want to know, to recognize that the field work has been mentioned as a nice data set, whatever. And this person here, that's Carmen, has done most of the field work, and I think she recognizes, no un aplauso, pero not yet, but she recognizes credit for the work he has done as a technical of this institute.
Muchas gracias,
And finally,
Carmen.
to say that he has done a very difficult thing. Let's go a dissertation with three, I will say, wonderful advisors, okay? Without ending crazy. And this is really, really a tough job. So thank you, Gabriela.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sergi?
No vol dir res, bueno, espera al final.
The last one will be the ecologist, no? So from the south, hydrologist, no? Geomorphology and ecology.
And I should be first. Okay. Gràcies per... I want to thank first the committee, the members of the committee, for being here. We all have very busy agendas, and it's not easy sometimes to find dates and to find the time to do this kind of event. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to have you, the three of you here, and we've learned a lot today. Also, I want to congratulate Gabriela for this wonderful piece of work. Realment és una tesi molt bona. Jo crec que has fet un gran treball durant tots aquests anys. No ha sigut fàcil. Les condicions de camp, la sequera, has fet una gran feina i com deia el Pep, doncs, treballar amb nosaltres tres doncs, a vegades tampoc ha sigut fàcil, perquè cadascú volia fer més coses i cadascú tirava pel seu cantó. No? I jo crec que... I a més, l'última cosa que vull dir és que, i això ho he dit bastant a les últimes tesis, potser perquè em faig gran, i és que, tal com ha dit el tribunal, és un treball que planteja moltes preguntes. O sigui, jo al final crec que les coses, els articles, les tesis, la feina que es fa, quan acabes la feina i acabes plantejant més preguntes que respostes, jo crec que ha valgut la pena. Perquè les respostes en ciència pràcticament no existeixen. O sigui, progressem fent preguntes. jo crec que al final de la teva tesi obre tants interrogants que es podria fer 2 tesis més, o 3 tesis més, i 14 papers més, perquè hi ha moltes coses que queden per contestar. I a mi és el que m'agrada del teu treball. Per tant, moltes gràcies per la feina feta i realment he après molt treballant amb tu tots aquests anys. And finally, I would like to say that it's a little bit tiring to see my face in the middle of the screen for 1 hour and a half. So please, can you change the slide?
Oh, we can change the slide.
Tired to see my face there. Moltes gràcies.
Okay, my co-supervisors are talking more than you, so I would be very brief. Thank you very much to the committee. Quiero decir también que hay que considerar, bueno, no nos queremos poner sentimentales, pero hay que recordar que Gabriela hizo todo un trabajo excepcional viniendo para acá, dejando su familia, sus raíces y estando estos años trabajando en condiciones a veces duras, no solamente por el trabajo en sí mismo, sino, en fin, por los interrogantes que plantea hacer una tesis. Y sin más, quiero felicitarte. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Not yet, not yet. Okay, so if we have no more questions from the jury, from the doctors, so you have to get up and no. You want me to come out?
Yes, no?
No. We will do that here, and we will call you back in 5-10 minutes after paperwork. Okay, if you don't mind.
Vale.
És un moment, cap problema. Sí? És per moure la gent, res més. Això ho du el
enviarlo o entrarme en tesis. Que Pablo. Sí, sí, hace las cosas. Claro que sí. Bueno, nois, va. Però posant-se amb la feina per l'altre, A veure, que ha sigut molt maco. Has de dir alguna cosa? No estic aquí que està fet l'any, has de dir alguna cosa. Sí, esto es que hacer tú. No, ya lo has dicho. Vámonos a comer. Ah, sí, una o más. Más, yo. Una foto para el tribunal. Sí. Con la familia del novio. La familia del novio. ¿Tú de parte de quién vienes?
Que la han cerrado,
Sí.
que la han cerrado.
Claro. ¿Tú de parte de quién vienes? Yo de un cura. Ah, eso te ligra, ¿no? Tú, el alto, a ver. No, eso pasa por tribunal. No tapes el licra, no tapes el licra. ¿Cómo es el director? S'has tapat el licra, S'ha tapat la fi de català. Què? Molt bé. Molt bé. La sèrie la fan 3 dimensions. Vas a Google Maps i la pots veure. Què? La foto de la sèrie és en 3 dimensions. I és un cabal. Espera, no moguis ara nosaltres. Hòstia, en sèrio. Escolta, em fa vergonya. Passa cap aquí. Hi ha algú ara?